My name's Matt Riccadella. We're here with the team from our Ohio-based campground RV site, which is 135 units, and we have Rich Fouts, the on-site manager, and Jessica Stender, our VP of operations, and Mikey McMahon, and we got Megan here with us. So we just want to take a moment and just talk about some of the value-add initiatives that we were successful in executing upon at this particular campground. Again, 135 sites. And Rich, I want to pass it over to you. Maybe you could again just kind of talk about what you were looking at and why you thought about this project the way you did and why you were so adamant about getting this in place. And then we could talk about some of the impact on net operating income.
Okay, so I just saw a need. So we an off season for a campground in our location. I mean, yeah, that's how most of them are, but why can't we be better, right? So how do you do that? We had 17 offerings for year round. So we expanded that to almost, I believe, 80, I believe is what we're up to now. And we expanded our seasonal offerings as well, because we had people that were on waiting lists supposedly for over 7 years, by what we have been hearing from people coming into camp and wanting these two different types of campings. So how do you go about that? We knew supposedly the infrastructure was not good, right, for year round, for the winter, for the cold months. But instead of just going by what people say, we checked it out. We looked at it. We actually dug up some repairs that we had to have completed, and they were well below the freeze line or the frost line for Ohio in this area. They were almost 3 feet actually. So with that information, and we did that about 4 different locations in the sections that we wanted to expand. And then we had to worry about water shutoffs and what it shut off and when. And so I had a plumber come out and give us an estimate, who we've used for projects in the past. And he suggested lowering everything and redoing everything and gave us a set amount. It didn't make sense to me. What was on that?
Do you remember that amount off the top of your head, Rich?
Yes. So the first section, I believe, was almost 130,000, and then the second section was 75 to 80,000, if I remember right. And so it was to lower everything below the 24-inch mark, right? Which the majority of our park is, from what we have found. So I had 2 more plumbers come in so I can get other opinions instead of going off of just one or mine. And both of those plumbers said they don't believe we need to lower the infrastructure because we appear to be already at the line for the majority of the park. So with that information, we figured above ground is what we'd have to work on, as long as we have the frost-proof, freeze-proof hydrants that drains below the frost point when you turn them off, right? So we had to, we put together a project. We knew we had probably 10 to 15 hydrants that needed replaced to be able to drain below the frost lines or into the main supply. And then all of the above ground prep we had to do. So with that information, we tried to figure out, Mike and I, how much that would cost. So we went into that, and I believe we could do it in-house for, I believe it was 20,000. And I believe we ultimately cut it down to about 10. So we were.
Sorry, Rich. So just if I may for a second here, just to kind of put these numbers in perspective, you got a bid to do some underground infrastructure work, which is really sewer lines, I take it, right?
They're water supply lines
of north of 200,000, and you and Mikey and the rest of the team were able to do this in-house for about $10,000.
We were, and that 200,000, that wasn't even above ground prep. So we were still going to have to be, complete the above ground requirements for year round camping.
Okay. And then Jess, can you just talk a moment about the amount of sites we had online before we executed on this project of putting these above ground water lines in, and now how many sites we have on the off season as a result of this?
Yeah, absolutely. I think to Rich's point, we had about 17 that were there year round prior to the project, and we've got about 80 online currently, and all 80 of those are absolutely full. We have those are all taken care of. I think through the better half of the first part of this year, if I'm not mistaken. Rich has got them almost through the seasonal aspect. So once we start to reopen again for those seasonal campers, we'll still be able to operate the way that we used to and accommodate for those as they come in as well. It was really to utilize as much as we could on that off season, but truly brought it from about 17 occupied to a total of 80 occupied year over year.
Wow, that's great. So that 135 sites, is that inclusive of these additional roughly 60 sites, or is that 60 sites now above and beyond that 135?
That's all inclusive. So we're still at the same number of sites in total, just more of them that we can use year round rather than just being pigeonholed to those 17 in the winter.
Got it. And just kind of to take a step back, I could tell you when we bought this project about 2 years ago now, we didn't underwrite any of this income. So when we put a financial projection together and we forecast our revenue and our expenses, historically, the prior owner never looked at this project the way we did, and they never rented these sites in the off season. Now that we're doing it, it completely transforms our financial outlook to the upside. And maybe you could talk just a moment about just the resulting net operating income increase as a result of this project, Jess and Rich and Mikey.
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead, Rich.
Because the sewer part was the first. So we have an amazing team, first of all, you guys and everybody here. But it made everything easy. So we also had 3 cabin style stays that we had on site that had a very low occupancy, right? So we looked at that and we just basically banked it into this whole project. So we were able to gain 3 sites plus 2 additional sites. So 5 additional sites that we're going to be gaining revenue from by doing this project linked with the cabin relocation. And the cabins alone are going to be able to, to rent for even more higher percentage now. So it's not just the one, but when you combine the 2 and looking at it objectively, where are we low? Well, let's figure out how to not be low there. So that's what we were able to do.
And just to put the financial numbers into perspective, our NOI in November of 2023 was actually a negative NOI for this property. And after November of 2024, the NOI was $33,000. So to put that into perspective and looking at the cap rate with the value add, we're looking at about an additional $2.1 million for this asset alone. And I think the beauty of this is the ability from the on-site manager to our corporate level to make sure that this got executed appropriately. And Mikey and Rich did a beautiful job of connecting on this and making it happen out there.
That's great. Just to kind of touch on that $2.1 million increase in asset value, we're talking about 5 months here, right, Jess? And correct me if I'm wrong, where the NOI for this component of the property, not the entire property, but for this off-season piece was roughly $9,500 in the red. It was a loss in the past, and now it's basically $33,000 in net. So we're talking about a swing here of almost $43,000 for 5 months. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't have a calculator in front of me. That represents about $170,000 increase in NOI across this one property, not inclusive of some of the other things that we've done at this property. So it really goes to show you, I mean, just to kind of shed some light on this for investors to see how we think about the value add process and the think like an owner mindset and the power of vertical integration. This is a case in point where you just hire a third-party property management company. They probably would never even think of a project like this. They're thinking more along the lines of, hey, let me collect the rents and I could charge a percentage of those rents. But when you have a visionary like Rich and Jess and Mikey and the rest of the team, and they're constantly thinking about how do we maximize value, this is what you get. So I just want to take a moment and acknowledge all of you for what you've done here, because this really helps us outperform compared to where we originally underwrote deals.
It's a strong asset, and our jobs are to make it even stronger, right? Squeeze every little bit out of it. And Matt, I think you hit a nail on the head that vertical integration is huge in what we do. Having Mikey on the development side kind of understand it from our perspective, and Rich being able to make his magic happen out on the ground, we wouldn't have been able to do it without the whole team. So we appreciate that.
That's huge. Well, I appreciate everything you guys have done here. And before you came on, Rich and I were chatting for a couple moments, and he's already in this mindset of how could I do this at a larger scale. And he's already got a couple properties picked out where it's not going to be the exact same project because every property is different. But that's where we always talk about we could kind of put that creativity hat on and think about how we can maximize value. He's got a couple parks that he's already got picked out where he's got some projects in mind that's going to have some pretty substantial value add and some pretty substantial increases in net operating income. So I'm excited to hear more about those.
I think the partnership, with the corporate level and then the on-sites are really, really important. I think having Rich out there as an asset manager out in the field, having that think like an owner mindset, both at the corporate level and on a nice on-site level is what differentiates us from your typical third-party manager that's just collecting a fee to collect a fee. We run properties like we own them. Most of the properties we do own, but we are looking at third-party management as well. And I think this is a perfect case study for our potential third-party management clients. How we can differentiate ourselves. Looking at a project we're looking at a property that was had a November NOI of negative, $9,000 and bringing it up to $33,000 this year or in 2024. That value creation is unmatched to most projects, and it takes a development team here at the corporate office, but it takes the on-sites. Seeing the opportunity, seeing that we can do projects in-house as well is really big. And I think that constant communication between us here at the corporate office and the on-site level is what makes these projects successful. So
yeah, I think that's a very good point. It's the collaboration of the entire team.
Yeah.
Everybody is getting involved, and there's this back and forth banter where we discuss these properties and where they're performing the way we want them to, where they're not performing the way we want them to, and then coming together and executing at the end of the day. That's just the name of the game. I always say our business model is quite simple. However, what's not so simple is the execution. And that's where a team is going to separate the normal operator or the mediocre from the exceptional. And we like to think we fall in that latter category.
Agreed. And this is just one example of 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 projects that are happening like this across the portfolio, and the power of our scale behind it. So it's just a small taste of what's to come in 2025. Different things are already in process that just haven't had enough time to fully come to fruition, which we're excited to talk more about later this year as they come up.